There's a story told of the Holy Rebbe of Meir from Premishlan, that in the town of Premishlan there were a few, what was called once upon a time Besnagdim. There was once a group of Jews that were against the Hasidim. So Meir Premishlan had in his town a group of Jews that were against him, that didn't hold of him and his Hasidic ways. And they decided one day that they were going to follow him. They noticed that every day before he came down to davening, to the morning prayers, he would go up a mountain. And they wanted to see what he did when he would go up this mountain. And they decided to follow him on a cold winter day. And there was ice and snow on the ground. And so they saw he was already an older man, and he would start going up the mountain. And so they started following him, but they started slipping. And they were much younger than he was, and they were trying to be quiet and everything. And Meir Premishlan was like walking quickly, and they just kept slipping and falling, and they couldn't get anywhere near up the mountain. They couldn't follow him. And he just went right up the mountain. Of course, he went to do his boidudus, to meditate on God before prayers. But they couldn't follow him, and they tried the next day, and this kept happening. Until finally, the story goes that they couldn't take it anymore, and they went over to Meir Premishlan, and they said, Rebbe, you're an older Jew. How do you go up the mountain so fast with all these slippery slopes, and we're slip sliding away, and you're just prancing up the mountain like it was nothing? How do you do it? So Meir Premishlan said to him like this, As me seinen verbunden Oven fällt me not derab unten. When you're bound up above, when you're tied up above, you don't fall down below. When you're tied down up above, when you have a bond, when you have a yesod, a kesher, a connection, you don't fall down below. Now, to be able to have a constant connection that we could always be holding on to, that no matter what kind of ice and snow we go through in life, we don't fall, there has to be something constant. Something that doesn't fluctuate, some kind of relationship with God that's not based on my mood, that's not based on my level, that's not based on how things are going in life. You have to have a yesod shebe. You have to have a connection through that aspect of recognition, humbly bowing and acknowledging God that completely transcends us and giving ourselves over in such a way, that level of God's infinity that none of us could really ever perceive, but therefore that's why God is absolutely everywhere. We could always be hanging on and holding on to that aspect of Hashem. Like the great Rabbi A.J. Heschel, in his book, Man is Not Alone, the first chapter, which is one of my favorites, he calls The Sense of the Ineffable. The sense of the ineffable is the fact that humanity feels an essential obligation to be aware, to be conscious, a compulsion to pay attention to what's beyond our grasp, to the fact that God is always beyond us. And he says that the sense of the sublime, of this ineffable, the fact that God is so completely beyond this, is the root of all man's creative activity in art, philosophy, noble living. And just like no flower has ever fully displayed the hidden vitality of the earth, so has no work of art, as much as we try to express with poetry, with song, we've never been able to bring to true expression the depth of the unutterable. The depth of the unutterable, in the sight of which the souls of saints, poets, and philosophers live. Saints, tzaddikim, poets, and philosophers live in the sight. They have a yesod shebe. They're connected above always to this ineffable, this yudke vavke, this ein sof, the infinity of God, which is completely not based on who we are, what we feel, what we're inspired to or not. They're just always living in the sight of that. And that brings to them the fact that therefore they can be creative and go through life without slipping and sliding through ice and snow. And as Rabbi Heschel says, the ineffable inhabits the magnificent and the common, the grandiose and the tiny facts of reality alike. Some people sense this quality at distant intervals in extraordinary events. Some people only feel it in Ne'ilah Yom Kippur. Others sense it in the ordinary events, in every fold, in every nook, day after day, hour after hour. To them, things are bereft of triteness. If you live with yesod shebe, you're always connected above to the sense of God's infinity, this oceanic feeling of God's transcendence. That's not based on who you are at all. You don't fall down below. Things are bereft of triteness. You could feel that in everything, in every branch of a tree, and everything you're about to eat. There's just God's Ein Sof, His infinity. You could always remain connected to that. The Hod Shebehod, that essential giving over oneself to God, you could have a yesod shebehod. You could always have that in life and always walk in the sight of God, who's beyond what we are, and therefore within everything that we are.